I started this idea of this transforming consciousness because it just occurred to me that we're like hunkering down for what looks to be several months now. You know, we don't know where this is going to come out, how it's going to come out, what the realities are. At the time, I thought I was exaggerating when I said by the end of the weekend there would be 1,000 cases and there would be, you know, over 500 deaths or something like that. I mean, we've just blown past that.
Yep.
Unbelievably. I mean, right now, today, I think there's 240,000 cases in the United States.
Yeah.
And 5,700, more than 5,700 people have died. Every time I see stats like that, I'm reminded of the fact that these are neighbors, friends, relatives, brothers, sisters, every walk of a person. And, you know, as I was telling Selena before you guys came on, my son is in New York. He's about to come out here, and we're going to be quarantined for a couple of weeks as a result of that, but I can't turn him away. I mean, it's just,
right.
You just can't do that. Yeah. And she said, well, you know, we're going to have to draw some lines around who we are and who we let in. And I said, like what? What are you going to do? I said, because I have these two neighbors who fall. They're like late 80s or 90, in their early 90s or something. They fall. I get the call, and one or the other one has taken a tumble, and they fall. And she said, well, you can't go over them. You can't pick them up in this day. And I said, absolutely, I have to go do that. I just cannot. She said, well, you call the paramedics. I said, who do you think the paramedics are? What are the paramedics going to do? I mean, be here in 45 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, and you know what?
They're also pretty busy right now.
And they're also very busy.
That's right.
So yeah. What do you know? That was a conversation we had. She says, I'm really troubled by that.
Yeah.
This morning I get the phone call. One of them fell. So I go put on a mask, couple gloves, go over, pick him up, put him on his walker, put him on the thing, walk home, throw the stuff away, you know, go wash, take off the shirt. But, you know, if this is the way I go down, I can live with it. You know, I'd much rather go down that way than say, you know, I'm sorry, Steve, I just can't come over there. I just don't have the protection gear. You know, I'll call paramedics for you. That doesn't come out of me very easily. And so I kind of look at it and think, you know, that to me, it's a sensibility that as we help each other, we grow stronger. We get a little bit closer to what's bothering us, and we begin to heal. But the healing comes by moving through it, not around it. And I think that moving through this stuff, over time, we're going to become closer to one another, not more distant from one another, because the world is asking us to be separate, to isolate. So anyway, that was my launch for the whole, you know, for the thing you have today.
Good one. Good one. Yeah.
There was a line I saw earlier today that it said, crises don't break societies, they rebuild what's already broken.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and I'm struck by, if we're coming apart, there's a couple of books by Jared Diamond.
Yes.
Jared Diamond.
Wow.
One of them is on the collapse, and the other one is on guns, germs, and steel.
Yes, that's right.
Germs section is really interesting. I reread that. And, you know, they're always a reflection of the culture that they can attach themselves to, because they don't bother the pandemic is never universal. It's always relative. It's always relative to what it seeks to come after in terms of a host that has become vulnerable to it. And I just found that very interesting, you know, that when we came to the New World, we brought a whole bunch of stuff over with us. And there were things that followed trade routes and things like that, that this is another situation where, you know, we've encountered a situation we need to deal with and figure out how to heal ourselves by incorporating it, by healing it, you know, healing ourselves in relation to it.
I'm so interested being on the line with so many healers, what you guys think the healing move is right now.
Well, yeah, there's two things that I wanted to share tonight, and if I get to one of them, that's great, and if I get to both of them, or save one for the next time. But and I think this is responding to you, Will. Last time I mentioned, and Patrick, I brought up this book, The Trouble with Reality, by Brooke Gladstone, that Voris, I learned, teaches, Voris, I wanted to make sure I had the right name, teaches annually. Well, in one of the first 10 pages, she cites this classic work by Walter Lippmann that was published in 1922, and it's called Public Opinion. So my copy arrived 2 days ago. Listen to the subtitle. Now, this is 1922. This is all pre-technology. But something about Lippmann's imagination, he was prescient with regard to newspapers and how public opinions are shaped. So here's the subtitle that the 2018 publishers put to it: How People Decide the Role of News, Propaganda, and Manufactured Consent in Modern Democracy and Political Elections. So this morning, I just opened it up. I couldn't stand it anymore. I've wanted to read it after Brooke Gladstone's quotes from it that just I found very exciting. And I'd like to read to you, you'll recognize this snippet from Book 7 of Plato's Republic. This is where I think we're stuck. And I use this for any responses from you all. But let me read it to you. Behold, human beings living in a sort of underground den, which has a mouth open towards the light and reaching all across the den. They have been here from their childhood and have their legs and necks chained so that they cannot move and can only see before them. For the chains are arranged in such a manner as to prevent them from turning round their heads. Now, just parenthetically, Dana and all of you, this struck me because of the theme, transformation of consciousness. So let me continue. At a distance, above and behind them, the light of a fire is blazing. And between the fire and the prisoners, there's a raised way. And you will see, if you look, a low wall built along the way, like the screen which marionette players have before them, over which they show their puppets. I see, he said, the one speaking with Socrates. And do you see, I said, men passing along the wall, carrying vessels, which appear over the wall. Also figures of men and animals made of wood and stone and various materials. And some of the prisoners, as you would expect, are talking, and some of them are silent. This is a strange image, he said, and they are strange prisoners. Like ourselves, I replied, and they see only their own shadows or the shadows of one another, which the fire throws on the opposite wall of the cave. How could they see anything then but the shadows if they were never allowed to move their heads? And of the objects which are being carried in like manner, they would see only the shadows? Yes, he said. And last line. And if they were able to talk with one another, would they not suppose that they were naming what was actually before them? And I began to think about this with regard to tonight, and thinking about what shackles bind any of us that keep transformation at bay. They are shackled to one point of view. This is how I played with the image. And that they can't speak. They have no voice. So shackled to one point of view and unable to articulate what it is they see. And they can't turn their heads, so tight are these shackles around their, or chains around their throats. So Will, your comment brought me to just kind of jump in with this piece from the Allegory of the Cave, because the healing, I don't think can truly launch, this is my sense, without first recognizing the shackles that keep us not only alienated from one another, the people that are right around us, but unable to articulate what it is that we're even seeing, which will turn out to be the shadows of substances which we have mistaken in the shadows for the real thing. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to open with that, or find a place in here to put that in, because it feels, Dana, so pertinent to the theme that you've invited us to participate in.
Yeah, I taught it brings me to something I wanted to bring up today too. I taught a class, the last class maybe, for philosophy for my class today, online like this for the first time, and teaching Passion of the Western Mind, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. Yeah. And we're in the epilogue, and I wouldn't be surprised if several of you remember actually what happens in the epilogue of that book. And in the epilogue, he's talking about a paradigm shift, and a paradigm shift from the kind of full trajectory of Western consciousness, which has been emphasizing a separation of the individual from the whole, an autonomization of the heroic ego from the maternal matrix and complex from which it was born, and the need for it to do that to mature. We're all familiar with that. Neumann talks about it and all that stuff too. But what he's saying is that, of course, and this is part of why we're all interested in this book, so we all feel the same way, this rising paradigm of network and connection, and he casts it in this structure that I think most of us are comfortable with, where there's a kind of masculine individuality focus and a kind of feminine network and holistic focus, the ground of being versus the individual in that ground. And one of the things he's calling for, 20 years ago, what he's talking about is a kind of final death of the heroic male ego that's brought us this far into a transformation, into what will be more balanced, hieros gamos, with the maternal structure that includes networks and systems and holistic and emotions and unconscious and all these things, right, are coming back into the equation. And then, of course, what I think is really important about that is that, the death is about setting up a rebirth. It's not about killing the masculine. It's not about end game masculine ego gone. No, but there is an important death that I think is happening right now, because we're seeing exactly what he talked about. The shadows that are messing with us is right now, everybody thinks that this is going to make people more afraid of everybody, more isolated, more distant, more in-bubbled into this isolation of ego and technology and all that stuff. But the opposite is happening. So at the exact moment that this is almost like a climax of that individuality momentum that bubbles us into enclosure, this is almost a climax of that. At the same time, you're seeing the opposite happen. This communication, infinite networking, infinite connectivity is happening right now. And so that's my hope, is a big part of, we're going to wake up in some ways from those chains, from that perspective.
Good.
And hopefully this is a moment, an inflection point, a nadir, where that's going to die. And those of us afraid of losing the masculine should let it go, because it will be reborn, and I think we should trust that.
Yeah, that's great. Very helpful. Yeah.
Well, there's a concern today that at an international level, the United States has a real issue with the apparent concern of the Chinese, who are moving into a way to position themselves as the most responsible and generous superpower. And
moral authorities a lot.
Whether they're doing it or not, our concern about them doing it is not about whether the results would be something, but that we're not doing it. You know, we have this inferiority or this fear about our own cultural identity, such that we can't allow somebody to subvert the whole American notion of ourselves being out there. You know, we want to be the one who is the popular dog in the fight. And this apparently is a big concern now about what decisions we make globally.
Yeah.
Well, I just to continue with what I was saying really quickly, I believe that the West is very committed to individual rights and to the individual. And I subscribe to that. I am too. I believe in defending individual rights big time. And the problem, the fear of China is...
Let's follow that for a second. Why do you feel that individual rights need to be protected, defended, honored, etc., so deeply? Where are you going with that?
Because I don't think anybody else has enough understanding and knowledge and access to truth to invade what my pursuit of truth is. My until somebody else has God's answer, they better stay the fuck out of mine, in my opinion.
I feel like there are so many intelligent, compassionate voices around that if anything I've done with my whole philosophy of life, it's been that I have cultivated trying to be around these wiser people. And it's not that I doubt my ability, but I've become more malleable. I've become more able to, you know, to listen and to become more global in my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it's about, but I'm wary of the whole protection of the individual, because I think that has gotten us, it's a good thing and it's very seductive, but I think it's gotten us into a lot of trouble.
Well, right now we're all begging for those rights to be taken. Please track us. Please come up with guns and keep people in their houses right now. Really, we should do martial law. I mean, right now we are begging for those rights to be taken away. And in many countries, they're being taken away a lot more quickly than here. And in my opinion, I really don't care what country is the richest and runs the world, blah, 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 as long as they don't think that they have the right to take away my individual rights, because it's too dangerous. I just don't trust anybody with that power. Ever, never, ever, ever will trust them with power over my individuality. And so if, yeah, it's not a cultural war for me. I'm happy for China to be the richest and most powerful, as long as they decide that they will accept international law that defends individual rights and that kind of thing. Boris is shaking his head. I want to know what you think.
Well, I have something else to say, but
okay.
My position, and I'll get back to that later, but I'm shaking my head because while I don't fundamentally disagree with you, what I do disagree with, and this is going to be my larger point, is our inability to deal with contradiction. Whether one is communal or individual, there is always a contradiction, right? And the problem with empire, and this is what the United States is concerned about in terms of being jealous of China, is that an empire actually isn't concerned about individualism. It's only concerned about its version of it. So while I support, I'll say it another way, the notion of individualism is highly overstated. There is no individual outside, even on the cellular level, there is no individual outside of the communal, right? So I think it's a stand in one church, but understand that every church has its contradiction. So that's why I'm shaking my head, not to dismiss what you said, but to understand that we need to take a contradiction. And I think that's the larger point. And what do I mean by that? So let's get back to the notion of shackles, which I think is a wonderful image to work with. Long ago, right, in Ion, Carl Jung said that the United States is very extroverted, right? And it's very masculine, as you alluded to. And at some point, in terms of a kind of objective unconscious, that was going to come to the fray. So let me stick with the shackles. What I mean by that is this Greek notion of the pharmakon, that there's always a cure in the disease, and there is a disease in the cure. And this virus offers both. And and that's what we have to wrestle with. So if we're going to take James Baldwin seriously, and I do, he argues that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And what we need to face here is, what is this virus telling us about our own culture? It's not merely an invasion, but it's one of you've already alluded to. It also reflects our own unconscious. And so what is the cure within this virus? And that is the shackles, our inability to stand in two places at one time. That's
so right. You're so right. And there's you guys may remember the helmet law. Why would how can you force an individual to wear a helmet? Because if that person dies, then it screws everybody else. And I believe that too. Yeah. I think we've always said, no, capitalism, communism, they're like oil and vinegar, right? But that's been problematic too. Ultimately, we do have to find a way to truly reconcile the individual with the collective and find a healthy way for that to happen. And personally, for me, I have my metaphorical image in wave-particle duality. Particle is individual, wave is collective. It's both.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know how the hell that translates into the COVID solution, but I do believe somehow or another, you're dead right. We can't, and right now the individual fighting for its individuality right now, when we need collectivity in our approach, is also very these people, they're saying, I'm going to party, that kind of stuff is exactly the problem.
Well, we also have today a modern metaphor for the unity of the individual and the collective coming through the mask, and one of my wife's solutions was to make a really cool mask, which she did. And I mean, it's really kind of neat, I mean,
it's super cool.
It's really cool. It goes on here. Right there. One string goes around, cool fabric, I got two of them. I mean, it's a real piece.
Yeah.
That's washable. In my life, art meets opportunity, and these kind of things show up.
Totally.
Complimented me on my shopping bags, and I'd say, "Where'd you get those? Where can I buy those?" Well, you have to marry the the person who makes them. And apparently this thing was not easy. She got a couple. I just think that they say it doesn't do anything to protect you, and that may be the point, but it communicates a message of concern and respect for others.
Right.
And I think that's worth everything. You know, it's
We've
like
all been at the grocery store with that person that doesn't actually respect enough boundaries, and it makes everybody upset.
they're out there though, Will. I mean, you know, it's like driving along the freeway, and I'm not going to single out motorcycle riders. There just might be a motorcycle rider in this crowd.
Thank you.
And they just drive along like they own the freeway, zooming between lanes.
Oh, no.
Police are among them.
No.
Probably not. No. But you know the impulse.
Yeah.
And I'm scared to death I'm going to run into one of these people.
Yeah.
They're out, but these are out there. They're like skiers coming down who have no control over their ability to not fall, and they don't understand the fall line, or they flatten out the tops of moguls and what have you. You live with people like this. You know, you can't eliminate them. You can't lock them up. It's not what it's about. You're better learning how to coexist. And so by befriending the thing that seems most alien to you, you incorporate that thing in you, and you develop a love for something that's a part of yourself that you largely feel was unrecognized.
Mm-hmm.
You know? I mean, I don't know a better way to keep myself whole than by salvaging the essence of the other. I just, you know, I haven't found a better act in town. And so I don't cultivate the fear, and I don't cultivate that. I'm, you know, like my son coming in from New York. I'll live like a monk for 2 weeks, put him upstairs. He can use the other bathroom. I won't use it. And 2 weeks later, we'll come out the other end and it'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly not going to not let him come here or send him off to his brothers and you guys go and coexist for 2 weeks, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Send him over to Will's, you know. You know, I don't know.
Let me know.
You embrace the other. The other is the source of our healing. It's just come to me that that's what I need to do. I don't know.
Yeah. And just a footnote to that, because I'm wanting to be careful on how much I speak because of inviting the others in. But who wrote that? I own it, but I can't remember the author. It's entitled "The Other Within." In other words, Dana, what you're saying is true, and that other's all. I mean, he's persuasive, and I tend to agree with it. The other's already in us, if we can recognize it. Maybe that's what you're. In addition, what you're saying, and I didn't track it quite as well as I might have, but I think they're already there. And then the other helps us recognize and embrace that figure.
I think it's Zeno in Plato's dialogue where Socrates says he doesn't teach people how to come up with the answer. He reveals the answer that they've already known.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, if we spread that out over a culture that is undergoing a lot of need for tolerance and compassion and patience, then we're all moving in the same direction. And I can only move me. I mean, you know, I'm not into the directive thing of trying to, and I love the contradiction and paradox. I mean, to me, Boris, that's the essence of growth. If I only seek agreement and ratification, all I'm doing is becoming more and more redundant and smaller.
And shackled. I mean, just to return to that image that then Boris leaned on as well. it just reinforces the one point of view, and there's no growth. There may be comfort in it, but there's no growth.
And even over time, I think it becomes less comfortable.
You may remember too that the character who does leave the cave simply realizes that his shackles aren't actually real, and they're not actually keeping him bound. And you may remember that the Devil Tarot card is the same thing, open shackles. We just stay in them. You know, and this is a motif we see in movies like V for Vendetta. The woman goes through all this torture while her prison's actually unlocked the whole damn time. You know, and I think that is, you know, whatever the shackles are, they're shackles we're putting on ourselves.
Well, that's it.
That we could
I think,
snap out whatever the heck we want.
I think
Or maybe we can. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, sorry. I was, I'm done.
Well, you know, mostly in the treatment room, if we're working with shackles all the time, right? And if no one sees their shackles, that's the problem. No one has that vision. And when they do have an opportunity to, I mean, it's just going back to the old thing, you know, you don't know the shackles that you're in if you're, you know, you're a fish, you're a little guppy until you pull it out. No one knows that. When people are pulled out, that is the place for change to occur. That's the spark. So how do we pull people out so that they can spark and then they can make choices about their lives?
Well, so,
Shut down everything that everybody's in. Because that's what's happening right now. Is stop every loop, every flow. I'll give you an example of one of my terrible, stupid addictions is I get on these stupid blog sites for Atlanta Braves baseball, right? And I was just starting to really get over wasting my time on that stuff when this happened. And but anybody who goes to those sites daily, now there's no content. And I don't care what it is, but everybody has something that just stopped. Some kind of chain, some kind of loops that they were in that just stopped right now. And I hope that everybody's getting a chance to kind of, you know, snap out of whatever loops they were in.
Yeah. That's the goal for all of us. Let's all snap out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll chime in at this point. I really appreciate what everybody has said a great deal. And I'll be personal. Of course, everybody has been, but personal in my own way here about just reporting what I've experienced in the last week or two. And I think actually, I'll tell a little story about the impetus of it. It was one of the first teaching days online that we needed to do, closing out the winter quarter of the Myth program. And right before, I meditate every morning, including on a teaching day, and on that particular occasion, I was really surprised by how much care and affection I felt for the people that I would soon be online, you know, maybe a half hour later when I was done doing it. And even more surprising was how I already felt connected, you know, before the Zoom meeting actually started. And the more surprising part was that suddenly I also then thought about the other classes that were being taught, the other faculty members, the other students, and I thought about Santa Barbara, and then it was completely effortless, but suddenly it was like, it was just zooming out. I thought of the state of California, I thought of the country, and before you know it, I was really thinking about the whole planet and really feeling kind of connected. So I found that very surprising and lovely, and put that energy into the, you know, teaching day. So after that, what has happened for me, and I'm sheltering, and you know, there's just my spouse and I and the cats. There's not too many other people to talk to. My prayer life has just sort of taken off in a very deep way. I do a little of that before meditating, but in that prayer, I just think and just allow whoever comes to mind. Many of you have come to mind. And some people I haven't thought of in decades. Some people were not living. Teachers I've had, people that have just been precious to me in my life in one way or another, and people that aren't particularly people I'm all that connected to or all that, you know, warm about. They've come to my mind too. And people, including people that, you know, maybe some people I disagree with, you know, where we work, but they have a job to do and I care about them doing it well for their sake and others. So that has really sort of taken off. And then at the end of the meditation, I typically would, you know, think I always kind of wanted to benefit somebody that comes to mind, usually people closest to me. But that has become quite an expansive list. And I just let that go, you know, for as long as it wants to go. Now, it also so happens, and I'm sure this is true for many of you, that I often end up reading something that just seems to connect with where I'm already at. Mm-hmm. And I thought of you, Dennis, quite a bit. This was something I was going to email you about. I'm reading a book called Primary Speech, subtitled The Psychology of Prayer. It's by Anne Ulinoff, a writer. And, you know, it's an amazing book. And it has chapters in there about intercessory, am I getting the right word? Prayer for others. Intercessory? Is that the right word? Anyway.
Intercession, yes.
Yeah. And she writes beautifully about how absolutely connecting that is. Prayer seems to be this solitary experience, or maybe something you're primarily doing for yourself. But the deeper you go into it, the more expansive and inclusive it becomes.
Yes.
And I feel that vividly. And you know, I am sensitive to the fact that, you know, things actually have to be done in the concrete, active interpersonal world, you know, for sure. But I think this area is also significant, you know, and it is something we can particularly do when we're sheltering. So yeah, that's how I've been navigating it, you know, these past couple of weeks.
What's the name of the book again?
We'll see where it goes from there. But
what's the name of the book again? Sorry.
It's called Primary Speech, subtitled The Psychology of Prayer. It's not particularly a new book, but the interesting thing about what she means by that is really it's kind of the speech that it's very instinctual, it's very primal, it's very original, you know, and in some respects starts off childishly, but that's really in some ways all right, because when you find that kind of space in yourself and that kind of language, it needs to start there. It needs to be awkward.
Yes.
It needs to be very real, including what your fears and anxieties are, what your aggressions are. Nothing really should be left out. And the more you own whatever those feelings and qualities are, the more it matures very quickly into something, you know, far less narcissistic and quite the opposite direction, far more compassionate and expansive to, again, people you may not have thought about at all, you know, for a very long time, living and dead.
No, I've read it, Patrick, and it's just a gem, and I'm getting the desire to reread it, listening to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Dennis.
And I mean, what I loved about what you had to say, Patrick, is at the beginning we talked about what is there to do, and I loved how you concretely addressed this notion of prayer being considered to be deeply tethered to solitude, where you talked about the contradiction. It has all this solitude, but yet it's about connection. And as Dana pointed out, it's otherness. And so to go back to the notion of the individual, and earlier Dana said, I think it was Dana who said that we already have these answers. If it wasn't Dana, I forget who said it, please remind me, but that we forget.
Yeah.
And Martin Buber already gave us the answer. He said, don't talk about ourselves as an I and an it. It is an I and a thou. And the thou takes into account otherness. It takes into account spirituality, where it is about objects and thou is about interrelationships. And
thou is back to that. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm finished.
Well, and it isn't an isolated thing. Whereas, like you're saying, thou exists in relationship, and that's back to that same shift from that comportment, that isolatory metaphor that is there in the ego and the atom, and even heroism sometimes. But the thou, bringing in that more, that the grounding it in the network of relationships. It's profound to hear you guys talk about this, because everybody's saying, I'm calling people I haven't talked to in forever. I'm connecting on social media, and I should have seen it coming. Patrick is praying for everybody. It's so beautiful. And thank you so much for bringing that into my, into me right now.
Yeah. Well, that
we have a lot to pray about.
Motion for us of you bringing up it and thou. To me, I've always had the sense of existence having a life, a soul of its own, long before it came to Pacifica. I mean, it was something that deeply resonated with me as I was evolving as a person, and whether it was a mountain or a wave or a trail or whatever it was, it had a life. And that life it revealed what my relationship to it was. And so it was easy for me to step into a thought of anima mundi and see the world as a world that had a thou quality about it, something where it had its own feelings, which was why in my initial call to do this kind of thing, I said, I think we're really missing out on what this whole virus thing is really about, because we're seeing it as something that's out there doing something to us rather than a manifestation of our own relationship to it. And that manifestation has to do with honoring the life force of this being, which is now perhaps even colonizing us and using humanity as a host. They've talked about wheat for years. Now, wheat doesn't happen to be a virus, but wheat is overrunning the earth. And they've talked about wheat having an intelligence of being able to compete for space and create itself as being desirable to humanity in all of its various products. Now,
like cats.
Pardon me?
Same thing with cats.
Like cats. You better
because they're very
talk. You can't diss cats too much. You only get a little bit of a line with cats.
Oh, that's no diss. That's no diss.
There are
they got us
people in the world. So this
wheat. Sorry.
Wheat. Yeah, but we've known for decades that the world is overpopulated. We have too many people living in too much proximity. And even if you end up with more people than you should in a house, you understand what it's like to run up against the boundaries of other people. So you put them out there in the world, and since there has never been a real guiding impulse on how many people we ought to have, we've left it up to, and I'll go back to you, Will, the individuality.
It's been the great compromise.
Where does the common sense come from? And I grew up in a large family. I can tell you, you get lost in a large family.
Yep.
I mean, 2 or 3 couple parents, and that's fine. But you start having 5 or 10 kids, and
you can't blame anything on anybody with 5 kids.
No. Yeah. And you everywhere you're pointing to somebody other than yourself. So just thinking that this virus is producing a teaching moment for us in the evolution of humanity. And if humanity is going to go much further into this life experience of living on the earth, we're going to have to learn something from it. And that's the whole transforming of consciousness. I don't know what it's going to be, but I can say within the next 3 or 4 or 5 months, it might reveal itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm getting a lot of insights from you guys, that's for sure. And I'll bet you that the teachers here are about to get a flood of insights from their students and essays.
Yeah, and yesterday I finished an independent study with a second-year Miss student. She's in Hawaii, and we had our 3rd Zoom conversation, which every one of them has just been so rich. But yesterday, the topic was, what is the mythology gathering around this virus? And we spent an hour just teasing out and exploring how the virus might be understood mythologically. And it was just, were we right? Were we wrong? Irrelevant. The conversation itself was meaningful enough for both of us. So, Will, to your point, I mean, I learned so much from her, who knows Hawaiian mythology and opened that whole realm up. It's just very exciting. Yeah.
I told you we're doing Passion of the Western Mind, and so that means that my students right now are writing their final essay, which, by the way, they're seniors, so it's their final essay in college. They're writing their final essay, bringing Tarnus's final chapter, reflecting on the totality of Western consciousness, right next to what is this COVID situation and what does it mean about this inflection point in Western and collective consciousness. I mean, I am so excited to get their essays. Is it terrible? I've never really been that excited to get a bunch of essays. I am very excited to get these essays. And it feels there's a lot of meaning going around right now.
Yes. Yes, there is.
This is definitely a meaning-making opportunity.
Yes.
It'll be very interesting what creative, like films and shows and documentaries and what have you, come out of this.
We're running a competition to inspire it with our students. Do something creative. We want to show it to the community. And I hope that Between is doing the same thing, by the way. This is a good time for Between.
Yes.
I'm both excited, but I'm also a little bit more scared than I'm excited. And that's okay, because I don't think I've ever quite been this scared, but this anxious. And I think part of it has to do with the fact I was reading The Secret of the Golden Flower. And I'll read, it's only 2 sentences where Jung argues, I have been deeply impressed with the fact that the new thing presented by fate seldom or never corresponds to conscious expectation. Right? And this is the new thing. And so if we think about Yeats and his notion of the second coming, as we're slouching towards Bethlehem, what is that second coming? Right? Derrida talks about it. And we like to think that we know, but we don't know. And I think why I'm afraid is that I have to accept the fact that I don't know. Right? I can get closer to it, though, by listening to you, by interrelating to you. So for me, this is not something that I can do. It's something that I have to do, or I'll fall upon myself into myself. And so this is good for me to hear this, to be with other people who are both agree and disagree. Right?
Same here.
Well, Second Coming was one of the poems that I used as a sort of a launching for this. But not only do we know what's slouching, but I'm not sure Bethlehem has revealed itself. We don't.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
We don't know the destination of the slouch.
That's right.
But, you know, in the same way that if you had lived in Chernobyl and you're suddenly just your city is invisibly decimated, all of your familiar landmarks are gone. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 or 3, 4 months of this. What if, I mean, science fiction writers would have a field day with this sort of thing. I mean, what if this thing metastasizes or takes form in culture? We can't see it. We don't know how it.
I heard they've not been able to show that anybody actually builds immunities. That scares the shit out of me. I can't believe that that's true, but that's what people are saying.
Well, they're saying that even if you don't have the symptoms, you can carry the disease.
Right.
you can communicate it and not even be affected by it. I mean, this is sort of like your worst nightmare in terms of something that would undo the cultural structure. You're supposed to, these things are supposed to be treatable. And we're doing the only thing that we know is that if you stay apart, if you're okay and you stay apart, you're supposed to be okay. I don't even know that we know that.
Not really. No.
I mean, I think we have we're dealing with an archetypal mystery. And the first person who comes up with, this is what it is and this is where it came from. I mean, they're saying it could have come from a pangolin or whatever that armadillo thing is over there, because it was unleashed through traditional, because it's used in traditional Chinese medicine. I mean, come on, give me a break. I mean, it could have come from something like that, but this doesn't behave in a traditional sort of way. So much like myth propagates, you can say, okay, it started off here and it moved from here and it took on a new form, go to there. Or they can evolve simultaneously because they're archetypal.
Yeah.
I don't know whether this thing is an archetypal virus, but it sure is popping up in a lot of strange places and it's behaving archetypally. And being a sort of lover of conspiracies and mysteries, I mean, I kind of can follow this until somebody says, well, it can't do that because here are the reasons.
No.
One of my friends who is a naturopath got coronavirus, and he had an interesting perspective. And I asked him, he's doing fine now, what his experience was, because he's a very soul-driven young man. And he said, it felt like an alien was invading my body. Mm-hmm. It did not feel like a normal virus. It was alien, and it kind of knew where to go and how to get me. He said, that really struck a chord with me. And, I thought about, was there some kind of genetic tampering in the virus? Because that's a possibility. I mean, none of us really know, but we do know that there's a really large biotech lab in Wuhan. That we know. Right. That exists. So,
well, we also know that bats are the primary subject for genetic, for virus research. Bats are major. And part of the reason for that is because we know that viruses can leap from a bat to a human much more easily than most. So we're thinking this comes from bats. And we also know that primary research is on bats, and the primary evidence for the fact that this is not a man-made thing is that there are all these reasons that it doesn't look man-made, but we could also it's also distinctly possible, and I'm not going down the conspiracy theory route, but I'm saying it's distinctly possible that this was cultivated intentionally inside of a bat, and then it wouldn't have looked like a genetically modified disease. But I don't know what I would say though is that I've been talking with a guy and I won't name his name because of what I'm about to say, but he's a mythologist, somewhat like us, in his 70s, spent a career in the NSA and CIA as a mythologist, which is kind of not surprising. But
hired you to get a job.
He points out that he doesn't believe that this is man-made. But if it was, it'd be pretty well done because it penetrates a society so well, because you carry it without knowing, it stays on surfaces for way longer than most things, you all the things. So it's like, I'm not saying there's a they, but it is pretty well done. I mean, as far as shutting down society, this is like made for it. And maybe it's archetypal, maybe it's from who knows where. But I think that we're foolish if we're not vigilantly asking these questions, at least.
Yes.
Selena, if you don't mind me asking, the friend to whom you were speaking, when he said that he felt like he was invaded by an alien, how did that make you feel?
Where I went to immediately that there was some sort of a genetic manipulation in this, because I know this young man really well, and that word was not a word that he uses. He's not in depth psychology. He's a doctor. He's a natural doctor. And so that word, and he said, you know, I understand by having it in my body how it can kill. Like, and he really struggled with it. He said, this is not like, and he's been sick. He's traveled all over the world. And he felt that it had such an unordinary energy, that his you know, vitamin pushes and all of that weren't working. I mean, it helped, I'm sure, but he really struggled to find a way to manage this in himself.
Wow. Gosh.
It seemed like Keith was saying it was particular to him. It knew what it needed to do relative to that particular person.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah. Yeah, when you were talking with your friend, the way I heard you describe it was that this alien somehow had his code. And so
yeah. I think, and there's other people. Well, I was looking on the internet, and I was randomly, I can't remember where I was looking, but there were other things that people said. You know, people would make comments. Be careful of this. It kind of knows your weaknesses. And I thought, you know, things like that were just making me. I'm not afraid of getting it. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm okay with my life and wherever it goes. But I just find it to be interesting. And I'm like, my patients are giving me all kinds of conspiracy theories. And I'm like, I don't know what's right. I don't have a clue. But all I know is this is not, and every doctor that is, you know, on television says this is not the regular kind of thing. There's something different than this one. You know, I don't know why it's different, but even the people that are experiencing it are very, very different. Why? And why did we bring this into our culture at this time? And one of the reasons, I think, is our culture was so friggin' malignant. And I think the malignancy of our culture is somehow part of this. And I can't articulate it any more than that.
That's well said.
Wow.
Perfect.
Yeah.
The alien thing is really striking to me in one particular context. If you think about the movie Alien, it's the exact, they made the movie built around the same archetypal tension. So what happens is one guy gets face hugger and all the men say, all for one for all, bring him on board. And Ripley, the woman, says, no, leave him out there. Save the tribe. And this is what we're doing right now. Right now, we're doing the exact alien thing. And so alien, literally, I just can't help but go there in my mind, because the way you talk about it, it's like literally the alien comes into you and takes you over from the inside out. That's how Alien works. And that's what that movie was about, the great tension between the all for one for all Western heroic ego and the maternal, no, we need to take care of the collective. And in this case, I'm sorry, to that individual.
Yeah.
It's just kind of yeah.
I think we're going to start and end this ritually, which we did start at 5. I just checked, and it's 6 o'clock. It's going to be 6 o'clock in a minute. And my sense is, once again, that we've had a real dynamic here, and it's for me, it has been rich with substance, and I don't necessarily have a guiding hand telling me, well, this is where we ought to go, this is what we ought to talk about, this is how we do it. My sense is, looking at it collectively over a body of time that we're going to face for the next 3 or 4 months, that cultivating these transformation of consciousness sessions will in and of itself provide a measure of healing for us. That as we get to the end of this period, we will have allowed ourselves not to get so distanced from it that we didn't allow it to happen to us in a direct way. I don't know if any of you have known anybody directly. It sounds like Selena has. I don't know anybody who's experienced it. It's all secondhand to me. I hear stories on the news and what have you. So it hasn't been. And I really want to, it's not like I'm praying for the moment, but I want to know that when it happens, I want to step up and I want to do the compassion that I say I'm capable of doing, you know, and be there for whomever that happens to be, whatever is called on to do that.
Yeah.